All right, guys, I went just 3-2 in my personal bets yesterday on brockpage.com for Friday, and that's good for just 60%. And boy, did those two losses really chap my ass. We lost our daily best play on Utah as they blew a 17-point lead going into the fourth quarter. And we also lost our board member tier bet as that team blew multiple leads and lost on a walk-off. Now, guys, we are still 2-0 in our last two Major League Baseball tier package bets on brockpage.com. So, getting off to a hot start in that package. There is a bit of a bright spot there, although I should have been betting more on those games too. You know, we're never satisfied here, guys. Even if I'm winning games, I most likely should be betting more on those games that I win. But either way, if you want to see which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that are actually being featured as my Major League Baseball tier bet here today, the link for that play is in the description section below. I'd love to have you on my website, and I'll explain a little bit more about what the difference is between what I do here on YouTube and what I do on my website at the end of the video. But with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some Major League Baseball action. Big slate of games here today. Should be a fun one. We're going to start off with the Orioles taking on the Rays, 1:10 Eastern first pitch on Saturday, April 9th, 2022. Tampa Bay's minus 230, totals 8.5. Drew Rasmussen for Tampa Bay, Jordan Lyles for Baltimore. And even though Lyles gave up a bunch of runs last season, he's going up against a Tampa Bay lineup who does tend to strike out an awful lot. And Lyles did record 146 strikeouts in 30 starts last season. Now, the O's did hold Tampa Bay to just 2 runs yesterday, and they did manage to cash in on the run line in that ball game. Meanwhile, offensively, 7 different players did manage to get hits for Baltimore despite their poor offensive production. Now, they're taking on a Tampa Bay team who struck out 9 times yesterday, and that includes 3 from catcher Mike Zunino alone. They also have Drew Rasmussen on the mound here today, who gave up a home run and 4 earned runs in just over 8 innings of work in spring training. I think we're going to have more of the same from yesterday. I'm going to lean toward Baltimore plus 1.5, keeping this one close, and the under 8.5 runs. Next ball game, White Sox, Tigers, 1:10 East. Chicago's minus 150, totals 8.5. Dylan Cease for Chicago, Casey Mize for Detroit. Now, Mize is coming off a pretty nice 2021 campaign despite his record. He had a 3.71 ERA last year, along with a 1.13 whip through 30 starts. And that efficiency did carry over into this year into spring training, as he had a 2.89 ERA through limited action. Now, hitting-wise, Austin Meadows, he got on base 4 times yesterday. He hit a triple and got walked 3 times at the plate. Meanwhile, Miggy Cabrera, he knocked in 2, and he touched a couple of bases in the process. Now, they're taking on a Chicago team who blew multiple leads to lose in walk-off fashion yesterday. And they also have Dylan Cease on the bump here today, who had some control issues last year despite putting up some pretty good numbers. Cease walked a career-high 68 batters last year, and he also hit a career-high 9 batters as well, 9 hit by pitches. Now, in addition to having a career-high whip of 1.36, Cease ended up throwing 13 wild pitches last year. So I do think the Tigers should be able to keep this one close once again. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Detroit plus 1.5 and the over 8.5 runs. Next ball game, it is going to be Mariners versus the Twins, 2:10 p.m. East. Minnesota's minus 135, totals 8.5. Sonny Gray for Minnesota, Logan Gilbert for Seattle. Now, Gilbert can definitely be rattled a bit. He had a 4.68 ERA last season and had some really lackluster starts in spring training this year. The righty allowed 3 homers and a dozen hits in just 10 innings of work in the spring. And even though the Mariners got the opening day win, they managed only 5 hits on the day. Their lone runs came from a Mitch Haniger 2-run homer. And if they had a tough time at the plate yesterday, we could potentially see more of the same today. They're facing Sonny Gray, who's got a career 3.61 ERA, and he allowed 0 hits in his lone spring training start this year. Now, Carlos Correa and Gio Urshela, they had hits yesterday as well, as Urshela took 1 yard yesterday for the Twins' only run. So I think we should see Minnesota get back on track here today. Certainly the reason why they brought Correa and Urshela into Minnesota is for run production. I think we're going to see it at least a little bit better than yesterday. I'm going to lean toward the Twins minus 135 and the under 8.5. Next ball game, Pirates Cardinals 215. St. Louis is minus 170. Totals 8.5. Miles Michaelis for the Cards. Mitch Keller for Pittsburgh. Now, Keller got the W just 5 times in 23 starts last season. He polished off the year with a 6.17 ERA, along with a 1.78 whip. As a matter of fact, this Buccos pitching staff allowed 9 runs in their opening day shutout loss to the Cards. Meanwhile, offensively, they've yet to record an extra base hit. They're taking on Miles Michaelis, who gets the start here today for St. Louis. He's coming off a solid spring training and also has a career 3.85 ERA. Meanwhile, offensively, the Cards had a real good day in the opener against the Pirates. They had 8 hits scattered amongst 6 players and a 5 RBI day for Tyler O'Neill. Tyler went 2 for 3 with a homer and once again 5 RBI. I think we're going to see some more of the same from St. Louis. I'm just not sure Pittsburgh's going to score enough to help put this one over. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards St. Louis minus 1.5 and the under 8.5 runs. Next ball game. Hey, let me check something real quick, guys. Hang on for a second. Okay, all good. All right, moving on. We're going to take a look at the Brewers taking on the Cubs. Sorry about that, guys. But anyway, Brewers taking on the Cubs, 2:20 p.m. East. Now, Milwaukee's minus 160, total 7.5. Brandon Woodruff for the Brew Crew, Justin Steele for Chicago. Now, Steele has just 9 major league starts under his belt, but he has recorded 59 Ks, 59 strikeouts, and just 57 innings of work. So once again, 59 strikeouts in just 57 innings of Major League Baseball. And as we know, as the Brewers lineup does tend to strike out an awful lot. Now, the Cubbies did get the W in the opener against Milwaukee, 5 runs off of 8 hits for Chicago, as Ian Happ went 3 for 4 with a couple of doubles and 2 RBI. Meanwhile, Jason Hayward hit a multi-hit game himself. Give me Chicago plus 1.5, under 7.5. Next game, Rangers, Blue Jays, 3:07 East. Toronto's 185, totals 9. Kevin Gausman for the Blue Jays, Dane Dunning for Texas. Now, Dunning got the W just 5 times in 25 starts last season. He finished the year with a 4.51 ERA along with a 1.43 whip. When it comes to defensive play, the Rangers allowed double-digit runs in their opening day loss to Toronto. And speaking of the Jays on the other side of things, they pounded out 9 hits and a couple of homers in their opening day victory. Espinal and Jansen, they hit home runs for the Jays, as Bo Bichette and Vladdy Guerrero Jr., they also had multi-hit games. Meanwhile, pitching-wise, Kevin Gausman's coming off a wonderful season with San Francisco last year. He went 14-6 with a 2.81 ERA and a whole bunch of strikeouts. Matter of fact, Gaussman fanned 227 batters in just 192 innings. And he also had a very impressive whip of just 1.04. I like the Jays' chances again here today. I'm going to lean toward Toronto minus 1.5 and the over 9 runs. Next ball game, it is going to be Marlins Giants 4:05 East. San Francisco's minus 140, total 7.5. Carlos Rodon for the Giants, Pablo Lopez for Miami. Now, I do think Lopez has enough good stuff to keep these guys in the game. The Fish did cash in on the run line in their season opener against San Francisco, and Lopez is actually coming off 2 very strong seasons. Now, the righty had a winning record along with a 3.61 ERA in 2020. Meanwhile, last season, he was even better with a 3.07 ERA and a 1.12 whip. Meanwhile, offensively, Jazz Chisholm, he continues to represent the organization well. He went 2 for 3 with a homer and a couple of ribbies. Meanwhile, Jacob Stallings, he had a multi-hit game himself, along with 3 RBI and a home run as well. Marlins showing a little power here yesterday. Now they're taking on a Giants team who's got Carlos Rodon on the bump here today. And to be honest with you, I know this sounds crazy, but I actually think Rodon kind of caught a little bit of lightning in a bottle at the right time recently. Aside from having a 2.37 ERA last year, his previous 5 seasons saw him with an ERA of 4.07 or higher. So probably right place, right time, got paid at the right time as well. But I think that's probably more indicative of the way he really pitches. Once again, previous last 5 seasons, 4.07 ERA or higher. I think it's another spot where Miami can keep it close and cover that run line. I'm going to lean toward Miami plus 1.5 and the over 7.5 runs. Next game, Red Sox, Yankees, 4:05 East. The Yankees are minus 175, totals 9. Luis Severino for New York, Nick Pivetta for Boston. Now, Pivetta's got a career 5.16 ERA, and he's yet to record a sub-4.53 ERA in a full season yet. And even though Pivetta is a big strikeout guy, he also has a career whip of 1.39, so you can definitely knock him around a little bit. He's taking on a Yankee lineup who scored 6 runs yesterday in their opening day win. Stan Rizzo and LeMahieu, they all hit home runs. And Aaron Judge, he had a multi-hit game himself. And even though we haven't seen much of Luis Severino in recent years, I think he should still be able to help get the job done in this spot here, even if he's just a shell of himself. I think he can help them get there. And even if he doesn't, the Yankees can potentially outscore Boston. I'm going to lean toward New York minus 175 and the over 9 runs. Next ball game, A's Phillies 4:05 Eastern first pitch. Philadelphia's minus $2, totals 9.5. Kyle Gibson for the Titans, Cole Irvin for Oakland. Now the former Philly Cole Irvin, he lost 15 games last season for Oakland. He had an ERA of 4.24. Now, the lefty was also lit up for 3 homers and 11 runs in just 14 innings of spring training work this year. He's taking on a powerful Phillies lineup who really has little gaps. You almost have to get through like 7 to 8 batters just to get a reasonable shot at recording an out. This lineup is crazy. Now, Hoskins, Schwarber, and the youngster Bryson Stott, they all had multi-hit games. Meanwhile, Rhys Hoskins and Bryce Harper, they scored 4 times between the two of them. Now, pitching-wise, Kyle Gibson, he's recorded double-digit wins in 6 out of his last 8 seasons. So even though his stuff isn't always electric, the guy does find ways to win games. I like the Phillies in this spot here today. Even if their pitching collapses, they can outscore anybody. I'm going to lean toward Philadelphia minus 1.5 and the over 9.5 runs. Next game, Guardians, Royals, 410 East. Kansas City's minus $1.25, totals 8.5 runs. Brad Keller for Kansas City, Zach Plesac for Cleveland. And even though Plesac did get knocked around in a couple of starts last year, he still finished the season with a 10-6 record, won a bunch of games, and he finished with a respectable 1.19 whip. And even though the Twins really didn't get a whole lot of run production in the opener, 6 different players did have hits in the ball game, as Miles Straw went 2 for 4 with a walk. Now they're taking on Brad Keller, who does have the ability to become unglued a little bit. He had a disastrous 8-12 year last season with a 5.39 ERA and a 1.66 whip. And even though the Royals did record a win yesterday against Cleveland this season, Santana, Mondesi, Perez, and Taylor, they did not record a hit in that ball game. Cleveland should bounce back here. I'm going to lean toward the Guardians plus $1.10 in the under 8.5. Next contest, Mets, Nats, 7:05 East. The New York Mets are minus 165, totals 9.5. Chris Bassett for New York, Johan Adon for Washington, or Adon. Adon has just 5 1/3 innings of major league work under his belt. He allowed a homer and 6 hits in that very short span. And out of Adon's 9 spring training innings pitched, he's allowed 7 earned runs, walked 3 batters, and he's given up a trio of home runs. Now he's going up against a Mets lineup who scored 12 runs in their prior 2 victories this year against Washington. Jeff McNeil, he's gone 5 for 8 this season with a homer and 3 ribbies. Meanwhile, Mark Canha's 4 for 6 with a couple of runs and 3 walks. Now, pitching-wise, Chris Bassett really had a strong tenure in Oakland. He's had a sub-3.82 ERA in each of his last 4 seasons in Oakland, and he comes off a career-best year in WHIP. Bassett finished his All-Star season last year with a 1.05 WHIP. So I don't see the Nats scoring a whole bunch of runs off of Bassett here today. I'm going to lean toward the New York Mets minus 165 and the under 9.5. Next ball game, Reds versus the Braves, 7:20 East. Atlanta's minus 160, totals 10 runs. Kyle Wright for the Braves, Vlad Gutierrez for Cincinnati. And even though Vlad's numbers weren't overly impressive last season, the 26-year-old did go 9-6, and he proved he could win ball games. Plain and simple. I don't care what your stats are, just as long as you get the W. Once again, 9-6 for Vlad. And even though the Reds did lose Nick Castellanos out of the lineup, they still do have guys who can pound the baseball. Kyle Farmer's 3 for 8 with a couple of runs scored and a pair of RBI. Meanwhile, Tyler Stevenson's 2 for 6 this year with 3 RBI as well. They're taking on a Braves team who's allowed 12 runs through 2 ball games already, and they failed to cash in on the run line in both of those contests. Kyle Wright's also got himself a career 6.56 ERA. He's actually thrown only 70 major league innings since 2018. And during that stretch of 4 seasons I just mentioned, Wright's also got himself a whip of 1.68. So once again, we're seeing this trend of Atlanta really going offensive heavy and not putting a major emphasis on sharp pitching. Helped them last year because they won the World Series, but I don't think that's a sustainable formula. I do think the Reds should be able to at least cash in on another run line here today. I'm going to lean towards Cincinnati plus 1.5 and the over 10 runs. Next ball game, Pods, D-backs, 8:10 p.m. Eastern start time. San Diego's minus 165, totals 9.5. Joe Musgrove for San Diego, Zach Davies for Arizona. And even though 2021 wasn't the greatest year for Davies, Zach's had an ERA in the threes or better in 5 out of his last 7 seasons. I think that's more indicative of his body of work. The D-backs have also held San Diego to just 5 total runs through 2 games this season. That includes an outright victory in the season opener. And when it comes to offensive production, Seth Beers 2 for 5 with a homer and 3 RBI. The D-backs are taking on Joe Musgrove, who's still just 12 and 14 in his 2 best seasons. Now, hitting-wise, there's a good chance he may not get much run support. Luke Voigt's 0 for 5 on the year. Meanwhile, Manny Machado and Will Myers are both just 1 for 8 individually as well. I'm just not so sure there's going to be enough scoring in this one for the Pods to be able to cover that run line. I'm going to lean toward Arizona plus 1.5, keeping this one close, and the under 9.5 runs. Next ball game, it is going to be Dodgers versus the Rockies, 8:10 p.m. East. The LA Dodgers are minus 150, totals 11.5. Tony Gonsolin for Los Angeles, German Marquez for Colorado. Now, Marquez has a career 4.28 ERA. He has just a 16 and 17 record over his past couple of seasons. When it comes to offensive production, the Rockies scored just 3 runs in the opener at Coors Field. Rogers and Grichuk were hitless in that ball game. And this Rockies lineup struck out a dozen times in that very contest. Now they're taking on a Dodger team who arguably has the best pitching staff in baseball. Tony Gonsolin also had 3 really good years with the Dodgers thus far. He's 10 and 5 over 142 innings of work since 2019. And he has a career 2.85 ERA during that time frame. He's kind of like the pocket knife. He can do it all. He can start, he can relieve, he can close, really just a versatile arm. Gonsolin's also showed some real solid control as he's hit just 2 batters in his career, and he also has a career whip of 1.08. Now offensively, Chris Taylor went 2 for 4 in the opener with a double and a run scored. Meanwhile, Gavin Lux went 1 for 2 with a couple of walks and a couple of RBI. I think the Dodgers should be able to get the job done in this spot here. Give me the LA Dodgers minus 150 and the under 11.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the show. It is going to be Astros versus the Angels, 9:07 East. Houston's minus 130, totals 8.5. Justin Verlander for the Stros, Noah Syndergaard for Los Angeles. And out of all the games to be the underdog, the books chose this one for the Angels to be catching plus money. They've got Noah Syndergaard on the bump here today, who's got a career 3.32 ERA. And despite coming off injury, he's still struck out nearly 800 batters in just 718 career innings of work. So you got to take that into account. Even if he's a shell of himself, he's still going to be pretty good in my opinion. Now offensively, more of the same out of Jared Walsh this year. He's gone 3 for 8 with a run scored and a couple of ribbies. They're taking on an aging Justin Verlander who's actually going to turn 40 next February. And although we did see a decent spring training out of Verlander, he's got only 6 innings of regular season work under his belt since 2019. Meanwhile, offensively for the Stros, Martin Maldonado, he's struggled to get his first hit this year. He's 0 for 7 through a couple of games right now. Meanwhile, Jose Altuve is just 1 for 8 himself with 5 strikeouts. I think the Angels can actually get the job done in this spot here and get the outright W. I certainly wouldn't, I wouldn't want to be laying $1.30 with Verlander in this spot here. I'm going to lean toward the Angels plus $1.10 and the over 8.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap. Powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are 2-0 in our last 2 Major League Baseball tier package bets. I like Baltimore plus 1.5, under 8.5 runs. Detroit plus 1.5, over 8.5. Minnesota minus 135, under 8.5. St. Louis minus 1.5, under 8.5. Chicago Cubs plus 1.5, under 7.5 runs. Toronto Blue Jays minus 1.5, over 9. Miami plus 1.5, over 7.5. New York Yankees minus 175, over 9 runs. Philadelphia minus 1.5, over 9.5. Cleveland plus $1.10, under 8.5 runs. New York Mets minus 165, under 9.5. Cincinnati plus 1.5, over 10. Arizona plus 1.5, under 9.5. LA Dodgers minus 150, under 11.5. And before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, just another reminder here, guys, that we're also 5-1 in our last 6 extra daily bets on BrockPage.com. And the link for that bet is also located in the description section below. It's only going to cost you just $2.99. I'm going to lean toward the LA Angels plus $1.10 and the over 8.5. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on BrockPage.com. Now, if you guys do end up getting a message, if you guys end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on BrockPage.com, you're going to get access to that content every single day all the way through the end of April. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And guys, if you want to get access to every single bet that I give out on that website, you're going to want to sign up for my board member tier package. Board members get access to every single bet that I give out on that website every single day, all the way through the end of April. It's an all-inclusive package. Now, you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on my YouTube channel and what I do on my website. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. And what I do on BrockPage.com is I actually share with you which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally. But most importantly, guys, I do have to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Saturday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at BrockPage.com.